Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You've reached the Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1. Thank you guys for tuning in. I like to spend Friday mornings with y'all. Today we got a fun show. We're going to go over kind of where the market's at. We're going to talk about the results of the election, as to how that might affect we don't really know how it's going to affect it, but how it'll affect the housing market, kind of where we're at now. And we have a special guest today, Renee Spieckermann? I don't know. She's going to correct me. I can't pronounce her last name correctly. But local wills and trusts and estate planning attorney, and she's fantastic. We recommend her in my office. I talked to her to come on the air today, so she's going to be the special guest, and we're going to talk all about wills, trusts, probate, and how you can use these things both to keep yourself from getting in trouble, and if you are in trouble, how to use them to get out. So she's going to be on today with us. It's going to be fun. But let's start with kind of the market and what we're talking about here. The big news in the real estate market these days and for the last couple of weeks has been that the mortgage rates have risen to their highest level since July. The Fed cut the rate, and yet the rate still went up. And that's because of the rallying in the bond market. And basically, good economic news, good job reports, rallies in the bond market, that sort of thing, are not good for interest rates, housing interest rates. There's any interest rates skyrocketing. So that's what's happened. So even though the Fed cut the rate last Thursday a quarter point, and last month a half a point, we're still at a position where the interest rates are actually some places above 7, some just below it. And we really, really need to get down under 6, preferably about 5.5 to restore some sort of normalcy. So hopefully that'll happen in the not too distant future. But while we're waiting, so here are the numbers. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, applications for mortgages, this is last week, fell as the 30-year rate went back to its summer highs. The 30-year rate rose for the 5th week in a row to 6.92, the highest level since July. The increase was due primarily to volatility in the bond market, concerns over the outcome of the presidential election, and uncertainty over the How Fed will act regarding its interest rate policy at its next meeting. And they're going to lower it again. I'll tell you right now, the Fed's going to act. They're going to lower it again in December because we're here. The interest rate hasn't come down on its own, even though the Fed's trying to now push it down. And as far as the volatility in the bond market, what they're meaning is when people get nervous about the stock market, money goes from the stock market into the bond market. When money goes into the bond market, which is a much safer bet, the bond market rallies. When the bond market rallies, interest rates go up. It's kind of that simple. Again, good economic news, bad for interest rates. Bad economic news, good for interest rates. That's kind of the speed break on the economy, as it were. And as far as concerns over the election, well, we know President Trump won. He's been reelected. But we have no idea what he's going to do because he says so many things, and the last time around said so many things, and some of them got done and some didn't. And this is no judgment. It's just that's the reality of it. And without knowing what the heck he's going to do, it's very difficult to tell you how the market's going to react because, for example, we're going to talk about this a little bit more specifically. If he goes after tariffs, like he said he's going to, that's going to be extraordinarily bad for the housing market because the cost of a lot of our lumber and a lot of our appliances and things like that go into houses come from other countries. And if you put a tariff on it, it will be passed on to the consumer. But that's a whole other subject. So yeah, and we got 3 areas of instability. Instability is not good for the market. The 10-year Treasury yield, which is way, way up, that's what we're talking about. This is the bond market. The 10-year Treasury, which is the long-term bond, is way up, and that in turn has also pushed mortgage rates up. After a brief burst of activity, says the Mortgage Bankers Association, in September, when rates were almost 60 basis points lower, down around 6%, overall applications have declined 27% in the last month, driven by the pullback in refinances. Because interest rates went up, fewer people are refinancing because we're back around 7 again, and that killed the refinance market. So that's where we're at now. So the big question is, how will mortgage rates change in 2025? And I got a list of experts here telling us that the Federal Reserve cut its key interest rate by a quarter point on Thursday as the central bank stuck to its decided course of action despite mortgage rates increasing the higher week after week. It was the second cut implemented by the Fed after finally reversing its rate hike strategy in September when it cut its key interest rate by 0.5 percentage point, its biggest cut since March of 2020. Desperately needed cut. Now, if you were watching this, guys, if you've been listening to the show at all, you'll know that even before the cut, the market was expecting it, and so that's what drove the interest rates down. By the time the cut actually happened with the Fed, the interest rate was down, but only for about a hot minute, because the bond market rallied, interest rates went back up. And that's why the Fed's cut didn't do as much as we would have liked it to have done, but it was helpful. Anyway, since the Federal Reserve cut short-term rates by 0.5 point in September, mortgage rates have surged to 7% as of November 7th. According to Freddie Mac, the weekly average for a 30-year fixed mortgage rate was 6.79, which is up from the week earlier. And none of that is good news. Look, here's kind of the bottom line. Instability is bad for markets, and for most markets. Certainly bad for the housing market. Now, what we're looking for at this point is, I don't know, a bad jobs report would be helpful. A bad consumer spending report going into Christmas would be helpful. Any of those things would be helpful. But if we don't have that, if the economy remains strong overall, it is going to create higher interest rates. That's just what we're living with. And higher interest rates are a problem with housing. Now, the good news is that if you're a buyer, that is, the good news is, although the interest rates are higher, there is more inventory coming to market. When I go over the numbers for Santa Clarita and the San Fernando Valley, which we'll do here in a little bit, you'll see what I'm talking about. There are more listings coming to market every day, and they're not selling as quickly as they were before. So the bottom line is right now, if you have a house to sell, and I've said this every week for the past several months, it needs to be a deal. Because if it's not a deal, it's not going to sell. No, it doesn't have to be a deal necessarily on price, but that's the most obvious. It could be a deal because yours is the only one with a view. Yours is the only one with an upgraded kitchen. Yours is the only one that's a fixer in the neighborhood, and somebody wants to buy a fixer and, for less money and fix it up themselves. There's got to be a hook. There's got to be a reason. Because if it's just another house on the market, then it's just going to be another house on the market, and it's going to sit. And that's completely related to the interest rates, and because they're so high. The cost of housing is ridiculous. And, we've been saying this for the last 2.5 years. It's all about affordability. Affordability, affordability, affordability. Those are the three most important words in the real estate market right now. And that's just what we're stuck with. So we really need to get that rate back down to 6%, which we had a shot at, and things were going great for about a half a minute, then it went south again, or north again, more accurately. So we really need to get down to 5.5, and then normalcy will return. But what I think is going to happen is I think the rate is going to stay elevated through the end of the year. I was hoping it would come down, but it's going to stay slightly elevated, or kind of where it's at now, maybe a little less. And then it's going to start to trend down in the beginning of 2025. So over time, the rate will come back. We will reach some sort of normalcy under 6%, but it's going to take a little bit longer than we thought it would because nobody seemed to see the rally in the barn market coming the way it has. So that is kind of where we're at. So I've got a great article here from the good people at Newsweek, which is something I was kind of working on, and they put it in, as usual, they put it in really tight synopsis for it. And they're talking about the title of the article is Homeowners Face Difficult Housing Market Under the Trump Presidency. This isn't necessarily a political thing. It's just if Trump enacts some of the policies he's talking about, it's going to be a problem. Donald Trump's return to the White House is unlikely to offer much relief to Americans struggling with soaring home prices, stubbornly high mortgage rates, and growing housing costs, as his policies could make home building more expensive and push mortgage rates even further up, experts told Newsweek. Trump suggests that through reducing illegal immigration, he could free millions of homes to American citizens, reducing demand on a supply-tight market. That is a fallacy. Illegal immigrants don't own a whole lot of houses, and it's statistically almost non-existent. So I don't see that making any difference whatsoever. That's just another stalking horse to beat that same issue. But the larger problem, according to Redfin's head of economic research, Chen Zhao, who's usually right about these things, throughout the election, Trump has pointed to housing affordability as a big problem. He said that he wants to lower mortgage rates and loosen building regulations. Me too. And that'll boost supply, and it would. He also wants to lower immigration to reduce housing demand and privatize government-sponsored enterprises Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and he has these ridiculous tariffs. Those three things, getting rid of moving illegal immigrants out of the country, is not going to help housing. It's going to have a negligible effect on housing. Although what it will do is create the housing costs will go up because it's going to be more expensive to build a house. I don't know if you've ever been on a building site, if you've watched residential houses being built. I don't know this for a fact, but I would not be surprised if you found out that a lot of the guys working in framing and painting and things like that are not here legally. And they're an important part of how these houses get built. And if they get removed, something else has got to replace them, and it's going to be more expensive. Now, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, I have no say on that. I'm just telling you, you do that, and that's what's going to happen. Also, you're not going to free up houses that an illegal immigrant is living in this house, and if he or she moves out, suddenly somebody else will move in and take it. It doesn't work like that. It just does. It's a pretty simplistic view. But the bigger problem, my concern, is privatizing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. That is that kind of thinking is what led to the disaster in 2008, 9, and 10. That is a horrendously bad idea. And of course, the tariffs. We get most of our lumber to build houses in this country from Canada, and some from Brazil and other places. We get most of our appliances from China. And I get you want to compete in the market. I'm an American. I want to compete too. I want to win. I think it's great. But the problem is when you introduce tariffs, it gets passed on to the consumer. There was a report I was reading recently that says that the average cost of a single-family home, and I think this was from Realtor.com, they anticipate if Trump actually does what he's saying he's going to do with the tariffs, that cost will go up by $90,000 on average per house in the United States. And that, in an already overburdened market that's already got housing prices spiraling out of control, therefore, all during the pandemic, we still haven't recovered from that cycle, to introduce another cause for cost to rise is a very, very bad idea. So we'll see what happens. But, he doesn't do a lot of what he says he's going to do, and a lot of what he says he's going to do and is part of. So it really just sort of depends on what he wants to do. But anyway, back to higher mortgage rates. All the expert Newsweek talked to will agree that mortgage rates are likely to rise in the short to medium term after Trump takes office in January 20th, 2025. In the short run, mortgage rates could rise due to less focus on budget deficit and extending the expected tax cuts. Lauren Shun, chief economist, senior vice president, research National Association of Realtors, told Newsweek. At the moment, mortgage rates are still inching up week by week, despite the Federal Reserve's recent decision to cut its key interest rate. We are all kind of in the same boat. So that's kind of where we're at as far as interest rates and affecting the market and stuff. But the bottom line is, I keep saying that today, the bottom line, the bottom line, the bottom line. The bottom line is, trying to shortcut it for you, when you have more of a commodity coming to the market, as we do now, we have more houses coming on the market. The numbers of listings are going up every month. And I'll go over the October numbers with you in a minute. It causes prices to stagnate and fall. I think housing prices are going to fall. We're already seeing markets weaken. Buyers already have more choice, and that's going to continue to get better for buyers, worse for sellers. We have a shifting market. It's shifting toward the buyer and away from the seller. It's been 99% seller's market for the last several years, so the fact that it's, 40, 60, still in favor of sellers, but buyers have more control, have more power in the market, isn't necessarily a bad thing. The pendulum needs to swing both ways on occasion. But what it does mean is that housing prices are going to come down. It's not going to be it's not going to be like it was in 2008 where there's a free fall. It's going to be anything like that. I think it's going to be a couple of points, 1 or 2%, maybe as much as 3% over the next year. But when housing prices are used to them going up week over week, month over month, and they stop going up, even if they plateau, it feels like they're going down. When they actually start to go down, there are going to be deals available for buyers. There just will be. So again, if you got a house to sell, it needs to be a deal because prices are going to get worse over time. They just are. And to back up that point, I want to go over this list, which I think is great. From CNN, they just put this together. 10 places where home prices in this country have plunged this year. This is over 2024. According to Realtor.com, home prices across the U.S. experienced a slight decline in September. The median list price fell 1% year over year. These are national numbers. This hasn't really hit California much. Year over year, settling at $425,000 as of the start of October. So that's the average price in the United States right now, $425,000. Obviously, in our area, it's twice that because we're in California and people want to live here. But that is the average, $425,000. Interestingly, the cost per square foot increased by 2.3% due to the cost for smaller houses increased. The cost per square foot has gone up 2.3% due to more smaller houses being listed. Over half of the top 50 housing markets saw price drops, with some areas experiencing steep declines. I'm going to go over a couple of these with you. Number one on the list, steepest decline in the last 12 months, Miami, Florida, 12.4% decrease. The new median price in Miami is $525,000. A lot of that also includes condos in Miami, because right now you can't get insurance on them. Any place you're close to water, and most of Miami is, there's serious insurance problems, and that's also what's driven that down. Cincinnati, Ohio, 9.5% decrease. They're number 2 on our list. San Francisco, the first and only one in California, 8.9% decrease. Over this year, San Francisco, on average, the average price of a house in San Francisco has dropped 8.9%. That's a serious. Now it was a very overheated market. It was one of the most overheated markets in the country, so it makes sense that it would be one of the ones to fall. But 8.9% is a heck of a lot for some of the most expensive real estate in the world. Kansas City, Missouri comes in at number 4, 8.4% drop. Austin, Texas comes in at number 5, 6.6% decrease. Jacksonville, Florida, Denver, Colorado, Orlando, Florida fill out the rest of the list. Tampa, Florida, 5.5% decrease. Nashville at number 10, 5.4% decrease. So every one of these, Miami, Cincinnati, San Francisco, Kansas, Austin, Jacksonville, Denver, Orlando, Tampa, and Nashville have all had steep decreases, anywhere from 5.4% to 12.4%. That's pretty serious. And what happens in other parts of the country will eventually happen here. California is a much larger economy than places like Kansas City, or Cincinnati, or Miami for that matter. And as a result, we tend to get these things a little bit later, and they tend to be a little bit softer for us. But when you have an area that's overpriced, it's going to take a bigger hit as the market balances out. It just is. There are parts of San Diego that are going to, I promise you, they will be on the list next month or 2 months. But Los Angeles are a little bit more stable, but just be aware, prices are going to start to come down. They just are. I'll go over one last thing here with you guys, because I think this is important. These are the numbers. I go over these numbers with you guys whenever they come out. I have the October numbers from the Southland Regional Association of Realtors, and they paint exactly the picture you would expect. In the Santa Clarita Valley, the median sales price right now, and this is for everything, condos, houses, whatever, what have you, everything that's residential, has dropped to $784,000. That's down $16,000 on average from just last month. So the new average is $784,000. That's not great. It's a 2% drop year over year. The average single-family homes, $865,000. The average condo is $565,000. There are 316 new listings that came on the market in the month of October. That's 22 more than came on the market in the previous month. We have 676 active listings. That's 58 more than the previous month. And we have 186 pending sales. That's only 14 more. So we have more new listings coming on the market. We have more active listings sitting on the market. And we don't really have that many more that are going to pending sales. That's a trend. That's telling you what it is. More houses coming to market, fewer of them selling. We're still selling more than we sold last month, so that's good, but that number is falling fast, and I'd hazard a guess that December is probably going to be lower as far as pending sales, and it'll still be higher as far as new listings and active listings. And for those of you who are curious, 316 new listings came to market, 676 currently on the market. That's everything residential in the Santa Clarita Valley. And if you talk about the San Fernando Valley, which I like to point out because it's the next valley over, it's also much, much larger, so it's a lot easier to tell trends there than it is here, just because there's just more volume there, so it'll give you better numbers. The median sales price in the San Fernando Valley is down to $949,000, down $29,000 from last month. The median sales price for a single-family home is $1,050,000. For a condo, it's $610,000. Down 30 grand and 11 grand respectively. There are 1,151 new listings in the San Fernando Valley. That's 50 less, which is interesting because you'd think that would go up, than the month before. But active listings, 2,376, 98 more than the month before. So listings are sitting longer, even with fewer listings coming to market, which is strange, because I think that's going to reverse itself next month for the San Fernando Valley. But they're still sitting on the market. They're still active listings are still higher by almost 100 units than they were last month. Pending sales are up by 76, so that's good. And the closed sales are up 81 from the month before, so that's pretty good too. But again, more stuff is coming on the market. Inventory is increasing. It's still very, very low overall, but it is increasing because it needs to. And I think that's a very good thing for buyers and just stability in the market. We didn't have enough stuff on the market. But if you're going to sell a house, it's got to be a deal. If you're a buyer, get ready, get yourself together, get your pre-qual done, get everything ready, because when those rates drop, and they will, you got to be ready to jump on it. I had clients who bought early last month, and they're very happy with their 6.2 interest rates. Now they would be at 7. So you got to put yourself in a position where you can make the most of this. And again, if you're a seller, you got to be a deal. So if you're a buyer, get prepared and be ready. Take your time, but get ready. If you're a seller, better be a deal. That's just where we're at. So that's the market. That's where we're at. That's where we're going. I think that's what we're going to see next month as well. They'll probably see that all the way through the first quarter of next year without any sort of change. The only difference would be if the market actually drops or if Trump enacts one of these policies, and we'll see how that happens. And they may be good, they may be bad. I'm hoping they'll be good. I'm hoping if Trump decides to do the tariff thing that it actually works out the way he says it will. I have my doubts because I don't think it's going to work that way. But I hope it does. Because, I have a lot of people in housing. I buy and sell houses all the time with people. I do my own, and I defend people from foreclosure. So a healthy housing market is nothing but good for me. And how we get there is how we get there. So hopefully it'll all work out. But I tell you what, let's go to break. Let's hear from some of the advertisers. When we come back, we're going to have Renee Spieckermann. She'll correct me. I can't pronounce her name. I apologize for that. Spieckermann, maybe it's that. She'll come on and correct me. And we're going to talk all about probate, wills, and trusts. I know that sounds rather boring, but believe me, when we get into this, you're going to find out how important this is, because people who do not do this get in big, big trouble. And Renee and her team have helped us out many, many times. She's awesome. You're going to want to hear what she has to say. I'm Rich. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix with your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1. Please come back after the break. We'll talk more. Thanks. After the break, I appreciate it. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in. We got a special guest in studio, Renee Spieckermann. I can't believe I had 3 shots at her name before the break, and I still got it all wrong. But it's Spieckermann, right? No, got it wrong. Oh, Spieckermann.
Yes.
God. Why don't you say it? This is Renee, and her last name is pronounced
Spieckermann.
Thank you. I apologize. You think if somebody has a name as weird as mine, I'd be able to get it right. Spieckermann. Oh boy, this is embarrassing. Okay, so Renee, I want to read your bio. Renee Spieckermann from the Law Offices of Renee L. Spieckermann, located here in Stevenson Ranch, founded her practice after working several years in boutique trust and estate firms in South Bay. Renee is an LA native. She received her bachelor's degree from UCLA. Oh, in just 3 years. That's impressive. Then worked for several different, as a paralegal for a while, then went to law school at Loyola Law School. And Renee is a California State Bar Certified Specialist in Estate Planning, Trusts, and Probate Law. She also has a legal master's degree in taxation. Her practice focuses on pre-death planning, trust, wills, powers of attorney, and post-death administration, including trust administration and probates. So before you die, talk to her, she gets you squared away. After you die, your relatives will be in good shape. Aside from owning and operating her firm, she's also involved here in Santa Clarita community as a board member with We Will and Circle of Hope. She also enjoys participating in her daughter's school activities in Valencia Valley when she can. And she also has a 5-star rating on Yelp. And I'll give you out her phone number now. We'll do it again at the end. 661-255-5411. That number again, 661-255-5411. Thank you for joining me on the show today. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming in.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I know. You said you've never done radio before, so it's kind of a new thing for you, which will be fun. I promise we'll make it easy for you. As you guys know, you regular listeners of the show know, what I do is I collect questions kind of all week long. I get emails about it, people call me about it, various questions, and some things need to be solved right away. Like we have a couple cases that you're working on for us right now where people are in trouble, and so we get those moving in the right direction immediately. But we also have questions that come out of this that I think the public would benefit from, so we like to go through these every week. So let's talk about some questions. We have a couple of questions for you. I don't mean to put you on the hot seat or anything, but you know more about this than I do, and most people do, which is why we're here. So the big question is, why is this? This actually comes from my staff, who's largely in their early 20s. Why is estate planning necessary? Keep in mind, this is a 22-year-old and a 25-year-old they're asking. So they are not necessarily audience for the answer, but I think it's a good question.
It is. And whether they need it themselves or they need to encourage family to do it, it is a really essential thing for people to do. Even if you think, oh, I don't have an estate implies like someone has a huge volume of assets. That's not necessarily true. Even if they don't, what you do have, you need to have a plan so that it's not just decided for you by operation of law who gets what and when. And even while you're living, estate planning encompasses those during life documents like powers of attorney, healthcare directives. You want to make the decision yourself who gets to be in charge of those things for you. You don't want it forced upon you.
Yeah, you don't need the state of California making those choices for you. So, and I did point out to both of them, they have parents who own houses. So yeah. So yeah, estate planning is necessary because it should just be part of your life. It should just be one of those things that you do, because it's one of those things that it will hurt very badly if you don't have it. And if you do have it, you'll never know how bad it could have been.
Yes, exactly.
It comes up to. So yeah. Okay, so what exactly is probate, and what happens during probate? Another big question.
So probate, I like to say, is the dirty word of, of trust and estates practice.
Everybody in general just knows that it should be avoided, but they don't really know what it is or why.
Exactly. And I would say that, it isn't as bad as people think, in the sense that it does not mean that the government takes all your money. That is not what probate is. However, it does mean that the government is in charge, in a sense, the court. It has to go through the court system in whatever county you're located in, and the court oversees the whole process. And that means everything is public record. That means it takes about, at the minimum, a year to get through. I've seen ones where I'm in one right now that has been going on. I'm not the administrator's attorney, but it's been going on for 6 years.
Ooh.
So,
that's brutal.
Yes. So it can be a nightmare in the length. Attorneys' fees are higher generally because they are based on the value of the estate. People balk at estate planning as a pre-death plan with the trust administration. Oh no, I don't want to create a trust. It's too expensive. If you don't, probate is going to cost you 3 to 6 or more times it would.
I can tell you from personal experience that having because I've done both, 2 sets of parents, having a trust in place was much easier, much faster, much better. And frankly, aside from the financial side, it was just emotionally better. We all knew what their desires were. It was clear. It was unambiguous. Everybody involved knew what we were supposed to do. We all knew our roles. So there was not a lot of family infighting and stuff. It all went very smoothly. Yes. I also had the experience where we didn't do that. And that was, there are fights that have been going on for over a dozen years now. And that's just personal stuff, let alone. And there wasn't that much money involved on either side of these things. It's just an intelligent thing to do. It's just something you just should have. If you own a piece of property, if you have a relative who owns a piece of property, this is the sort of thing you should do. You want to make these decisions yourself rather than having them foisted upon you.
Yes. And the limit for people who don't know is if you have $184,500 in your personal name alone. Okay. And that is value. That's fair market value of a property. That's not just, but my equity is not that high. It doesn't matter.
It's the overall value of the property.
It's the overall value. So out in your name alone means something that is not in a living trust and does not have beneficiaries. You need to have a trust. A will does not save you from probate.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. We have a will. Yeah, it's nice because at least it points you in the right direction, but that's it. That is not. You're still going to have the state of California imposing its will, its statutory will upon you.
Yes, you at least do direct where you want it to go and who you want to be in charge of it, but the state is still overseeing it all, and it's still in that court system where you have higher fees, all the things.
Well, my next question here is going to be, how long does probate take and what does it usually cost? We already covered that. So let's
Yeah.
move on to the next one. What can I do to avoid probate and be ready for probate?
So avoiding it, I would say encourage people in your life and you yourself make the plan. Have a trust.
Yeah.
I mean, just set it all up. Have a trust and fund the trust.
Yeah,
is the other
trust.
thing.
I want to go into fun of the trust a little more, but trust is not as complicated as people think it is. It looks complicated when you see it on paper, but it's
It
really
does.
not. When you get down to what it actually does, I mean, driving a car is complicated until you do it for a while, and then it's just driving a car. It's not that complicated, and it's incredibly important because, like I said, I've seen it go well. I've seen it go badly. I see it in my practice all the time. People come in, they have problems with real estate, and it gets them all the time. I'll give you one really good example. If somebody has, like you inherit a property and it's got a reverse mortgage on it. If you have a trust in place, you'll have no trouble. You'll get the property into your name very quickly and you can deal with it. But if you have to go through probate, which could take up to a year before you even have control of the property, and in that time, the bank who had the reverse mortgage is going to foreclose.
Yes.
You're going to lose the property while you're still struggling your way through probate. That's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. But if you set it up ahead of time, it's easy. It's just nothing. You know what you're supposed to do. Your loved ones had their wishes put down. It avoids all this stuff. It avoids a lot of the expense. It's one of those short-term, I was going to say pain, but short-term annoyance for
Yes.
long-term stability and financial viability. It's just a good idea. It is just a good idea.
Getting ready for probate, I'm going to say,
Please.
is one of those things where, I mean, if you haven't avoided it or you have a family member that hasn't avoided it, I would say this is most important, and I see it most often with people who have siblings or a parent who just don't make the plan. If they're super reluctant to go get the estate plan done, which people are, and they never do it, at least get them to have a conversation about where things are, what they have, so that you at least aren't flying completely blind.
Well, don't you think I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people, because when you're talking about setting up a trust or a will, you're talking about expiring. You're talking about your death.
Yes.
And I have news for you. For those of you listening, you are, don't mean to bring you down, but you are all going to die one day. Everything that lives dies. That's just the way it works. You have no control over that. Maybe a little shorter, maybe a little longer, but we all end the same way in the end. So this is going to happen, whether you want it to or not. It is going to happen. So you are wise to plan for it, because all of us have those people who are going to leave behind, and you want to handle those things properly so that they're not left cleaning up your mess. And that's really what it comes down to. We've got one right now. I want to talk about this. We've got one right now that I know Renee just started working on for us, where lovely gal, she thought her dad had everything all sorted out. She's in her late 60s. She has a brother who he's got cerebral palsy and all sorts of stuff. She is his sole caregiver and has been for many, many years. She's basically devoted her life to taking care of her brother, which is a pretty noble thing to do. And she thought everything was squared away. Didn't even know her dad had a reverse mortgage. He passed away about 6 months ago, and now she's in a position where she's in foreclosure and has no idea what to do. So she actually heard the radio show and called me over that, which is good. And so I got her in touch with Renee, and they're working it out. But she is in foreclosure, because what happens with a reverse mortgage is when the loved one dies, and we've talked about this in previous shows, so I won't go over too much. Although if you have questions about it, give me a call, and I'll be happy to tell you about it. There are guidelines that the bank has to follow as far as foreclosures. And if you don't contact them within 30 days to tell them you're taking over the property, they're going to put you in the queue for foreclosure. At the end of 3 months, they're going to file an NOD. You might get up to 6 months, but certainly at the end of 6 months, they're filing an NOD, notice of default, first step in a foreclosure. And then you can sometimes get extensions if you're selling the house. But if you're living in the house, you want to keep it, your timeline is going to be pretty tight. And if you don't even have control over the asset, you do not own the house because probate isn't complete, you don't have title to the house, you can't get a loan. You can't refinance it. You cannot refinance out of the reverse mortgage or get a replacement for it or whatever to save the house you've lived in for 40 years. Mm-hmm. So in this case, we should now talk to Renee, so we'll get the probate moving. But talk about how you use probate to defend against a foreclosure, because I know that's kind of specific to this case, but it comes up a lot.
So it comes up a decent amount, especially these unknowns.
Yeah.
You know, and with parents who and reverse mortgages a lot of times. Yeah. So people have good and bad feelings about reverse mortgages, which is a whole nother conversation. But probates, just if you have a family member that died and you are living in the property or want to keep the property, contact an attorney right away, immediately.
Yeah.
That's your biggest defense is,
Yeah.
I mean, don't wait 6 months, don't wait. And along those lines, there are methods we can use. Ex parte, it's called. You go in emergency to try and, get orders, get things to stop foreclosures. It's honestly the judge's call whether they see that as an emergency or not. Obviously, if you have a good attorney, they can argue it better.
Let's interrupt for a second. That makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. I have seen the results with an attorney that is less than, and I've seen the results with an attorney that knows what they're doing. You and Harun in this case. Another client story. We had a client who did not do anything about probate for almost 2 years. How they didn't get foreclosed on during that time is the bank was Navy Federal, and they're a little bit more generous about that because most of their clientele are service members, and they're keen to that. But after 2 years, they'd kind of had enough, so they were foreclosing. And in this case, probate got started, got far enough around. Your associate Harun went in ex parte, which means he went in front of the judge, and convinced the judge that they need more time, and so they were given an extra 6 months. So now we can get them through probate. Now they can refinance the house, do what they need to do. But I suspect without a good attorney going to bat for them, I know they would have for certain lost that house. And just so you guys know, that house, in that particular case, they owe about $400,000 on a house that's worth about $1 million. So that's $600,000 that would have gone down the drain in foreclosure. I mean, maybe there was something left over the foreclosure sale, a couple of bucks, but I doubt it. And they would have lost the house. And therefore, for family members living there, it's a big house. So without your office's intervention, they would have lost the house for sure. Now we got some time, we can deal with it.
Yes.
So it is that important. I mean, these are the stakes you're playing for. So let's see. Let's talk about another one. Let's see. What if a loved one dies without a will or a trust? Then what? The worst, most normal thing sort of happens where my mom and dad died 6 months ago, and I got this foreclosure notice. What do I do now?
Well, you have to open probate right away. And if there is no will or trust, so there's no directions from the decedent, would be what we'd call them, is no directions as to where their stuff should go, who should be in charge. There is a California probate code sections that lay out who has order as far as taking care of things, who is the beneficiary of things, the heirs. So especially if there is a family member that you don't want to get stuff, you better write that down.
Yep.
So again, go to an attorney, you're going to have to open a probate if you're the child of someone who passed away without a...
My wife, for obvious reasons, if you're listening here, you like this story. She refers to it as kind of like, my wife's also a real estate attorney, to full disclosure there. She refers to it as going to the dentist. It's not, no one wants to go to the dentist. All due respect to Dr. Chen, who's a fabulous dentist. Thank you very much. But you just have to go. You just have to. Otherwise, your teeth are going to rot and fall out of your head. They just are. So if you enjoy your teeth, you have to go to the dentist. This is very much that sort of thing. It's just one of those things that you just have to do. It is just the world in which we live. It is just the modern world that we're in. You just have to do this because if you don't, it will be done for you. And that's kind of it.
And it's uncomfortable, and it doesn't. But
it's public.
The probate part is public.
Yeah,
you can make it a lot less uncomfortable by doing the pre-planning.
Yeah. I'll tell you another client story. We've got one now in Friendly Valley where there was a trust. It was all set up ahead of time. It was all done properly. Unfortunately, her grandmother passed away. She named her granddaughter as her trustee, and it went very smoothly. The transfer was super easy. Took maybe a day and a half to get it done. We gave the title company a copy of the trust. We filled out the proper documents, had them stamped and sent them a couple $100 to file it, and we're done. Literally it. At the same time, we had one of those other clients where we didn't know if they're going to be able to keep the house. Luckily, we got it done. Your office got it taken care of for us, so we were able to keep them in the house. But it is that big a difference. It is night and day. And it's not that expensive, and it doesn't take that long. It's not going to take that much out of your life just to do this. And it is unbelievably important. Granted, when you die, it doesn't matter to you. But it is incredibly important to those you leave behind. It just is. So this is another fun one, which this is kind of such a wide-ranging question. Is probate necessary? I don't think you have a choice. It just sort of is.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, it depends if you've done
The very lawyerly answer is it depends. No, it depends if you've done the planning. It depends how much you've got outside of if you don't have a house, if you don't have a, but most people do. So, so yes, if you haven't done the proper planning, yes.
Yeah. Let me also add to that. AARP, I quote this survey constantly. Just before the pandemic, AARP did a survey, a pretty good sized one, because usually these surveys are a couple hundred people, and that's usually not enough to tell. But this was about 10,000 people, which was huge, survey census, and they concluded that 99% of every single person in the United States will require the equity in their house built up over years to be able to retire. It is the single largest asset that 99% of the people, I don't know that 1% who doesn't have that or doesn't need that, but you need that not to retire well, not to have a sailboat, or anything, but to retire at all. Food, clothing, housing. To be able to do that, you need the equity in that house. And that means, because that's sort of the sort of forced savings that we all have if you own a house, which is why it's a good idea to own a house. For many reasons, but that will kind of move you to where you need to go. It's also a good source of funds when you have kids in college. There's all kinds of stuff you can do, but only if you maintain the asset. And this is like that. This is, by changing the filter in the air conditioner, you have to do that or it blows out. There's certain things you have to do, and I tell clients all the time, this is one of them. You have an asset now. You have to plan for it if they come into the office because they're having trouble, they're in foreclosure or something. How do we prevent this from happening again? And I just don't think enough people understand the importance of this. They don't get it until it's too late.
Yeah.
And when it goes south, they don't usually tell their friends and relatives about it. You tell your friends and relatives about good things. You don't tell them about bad things unless they're really bad and you feel you're the victim. So yeah, I cannot begin to overstate to you the importance of this. It's a simple thing if you do it now. It is expensive and time-consuming and painful for those you leave behind if you don't.
Yes.
Not only that, you should sit down with the people that you are in your life and tell them, this is what I want to do. I mean, in my own case, my in-laws were very smart about this. They sat down with my wife has two brothers, sat down with everybody and said, this is what we want to do. If anybody's got any objections, raise them now. And that's why it was extremely smooth. I mean, their death was horrible, but as far as the distribution of the assets and the trust and everything, it was extremely easy to get done. Nobody had any unrealistic expectations. Nobody was upset about anything, well, except for we missed them, but the obvious. But as far as the settling of an estate, it was super easy. I mean, it's literally the difference between filling out, as far as a house is concerned, filling out 2 forms and paying a couple $100 or a year of your life, thousands of dollars, and you may not get what you're supposed to get at the end of the day.
Right.
You just may not. So I tell you, let's go to break. Let's hear from some more. If you'd be nice enough to hang in, Renee, we'll have you through the third segment if you would. I got some other questions for you. Please listen through the break, guys. When we come back, we're going to talk more to Renee about wills and trusts and planning and the importance of it and how you can use it, especially if you have one of these reverse mortgages and you get into a foreclosure. Please listen to the break. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, thanks for listening through the break. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, FM 98.1, AM 1220, your hometown station. And as you guys know on the show, we like to answer questions, real estate questions. I have 30 years of practice in fixing people's problems. I do foreclosure defense and all things like that for free. And the weirder it is, the more likely it is to wind up on my desk at some point. I get all kinds of crazy stuff. And we get a lot of stuff revolving around probate and wills and trusts and things of that nature, usually because something's gone wrong. And we have a special guest in studio today, Renee Spieckermann.
Yep.
Oh, I got it right.
Yay!
Got it. Okay, I'll have a cookie afterwards. So those of you who just
congratulate yourself.
Thank you very much. I have no trouble congratulating myself. Ask my wife; she'll tell you. Those of you who are listening, that's the only time I've gotten Renee's name right. I've known her for quite a while, and I got her name wrong all day today, so I apologize for that, but at least we got it right once. That's good for me. Anyway, so we're talking about all things wills, trust, and estate planning and things, and that sounds like a very dry topic, and it is, except unless it goes wrong. It should be a dry topic. It should be as boring as sand because you've done what you're supposed to do. You have a trust in place. Everyone knows what's going to happen. When you pass away, that's what happens.
Yep.
That would be nice. That is the goal here.
Yes.
But when people don't do that, which happens a lot, then things go south. And then you find yourself going through probate, usually late, costing yourself a lot of money and a lot of time. And worst of all, you are at the whims of the California legal system. And whatever the statute calls out and the judge sees fit to impose, that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
So you very quickly lose control of your own wishes. And that's the only thing that really gets to dictate what happens to your. I know it says estate sounds like it's a thing. If you own anything, it is an estate.
Yeah,
if
you don't need to be a Rockefeller.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you bother doing a trust if all you had was a beat up Honda Accord and didn't own a house.
No,
but anything, certainly if you own a house, certainly if you have some significant assets, and I mean significant, just even lower middle class type significant. You've got to take care of these things because otherwise you will be damaging the people you leave behind.
And I did want to mention, even in a trust scenario, you need to make sure that, yes, you create the trust document, but you fund the trust, because you will still end up in a different kind. You won't have a full probate, but you may have to have some court time.
Explain a little more. What does
Yes.
fund the trust mean?
So funding the trust means if you just create the document and say, great, I have a trust, I'm done, nothing is in that trust. You actually have to retitle your assets, primarily the house. And good estate planning attorneys will assist you with that part.
Yep.
Make sure that the new deed gets filed with the recorder's office saying this trust is now owned by trustees of the whatever
XYZ
trust.
trust,
That is now funded. Now your house is funded into your trust.
Because so in other words, you can't just draft the trust. You have to put your assets in the trust.
Correct, including investment accounts,
Houses, cars, anything.
Yes. Cars
Yeah,
are a little
less so, I
different
suppose,
because the DMV doesn't really like to
Yeah, okay,
do
fair
that.
enough.
But houses,
This
for
is why I asked
sure, the house. And otherwise, you end up in court with something called a Hegstad petition, which is
Sounds awful.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it sounds awful.
It's a lot shorter than a probate, but you still are going to end up paying an attorney a good chunk of money to do that. It's going to get set for hearing probably 4 months out. And you can imagine if you're in a reverse mortgage type scenario, you don't
Clock's
want
ticking.
that.
Yeah, clock's
you
ticking.
again don't have that time.
So something else I wanted to touch on a little bit. There is no such thing. I get this question a lot. There's no such thing as a Department of Wills and Trusts in the state of California. It doesn't exist. In other words, when you have a trust, okay, so you've done it, you've got the trust, you're all set.
Yeah.
There's no place if you lose the document that you can go get it.
No.
So you best be careful about that.
Be careful. Keep the original somewhere safe. The original will is actually more important than the original trust.
Sure.
And don't only keep your documents in a safe deposit box where no one knows where they are. I get that a lot.
Yeah, we had a situation in my life. We had after the '94 earthquake. The bank my grandmother had used for years, that my mother had used, the safety deposit box. We went to go get stuff out of the box, and the bank didn't exist anymore. It was now a parking lot.
Oh.
Or was being turned into a parking lot. So that was fun to track it down. We did find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that led to some uneasy times. So yeah, so once you do all this stuff, you need to keep, I would say, at least 3 copies. You have one with a trusted friend, relative, whatever, so they just have a copy. One for yourself, and then one. Make sure you keep a good. Talk to your attorney. Your attorney will have a copy of it as well. But if you have a trust that's 20 years old, don't be surprised if you go back and that attorney is no longer in practice and sometimes not on the planet with us anymore.
And if you have a trust that's 20 years old, I recommend reviewing it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, yeah, I've heard that as well. I think you actually told me that. But yeah, that's the other thing. Every so often, how often do you think you need to review a trust?
I would say every 10 years, or if something big changes.
Sure, you buy a house, sell a house, that sort of thing.
Buy a
Somebody
house,
gets
sell
born.
a house, somebody passes away that's written in there,
Well, that's sad. I went with somebody being born, you with somebody passing away. I think you can tell the difference in our specialties. But yeah, when any life stuff happens, you need to adjust. You have to. But again, you've got to keep a copy. I cannot tell you the number of times people have come to me and they have said, "Oh, it's fine. It's in a trust." I say, "Great. Where's the trust?" And they shrug their shoulders. Like I should know. Like I should point them to the department. There is no department for that. You don't
Correct.
file them.
Correct.
And if it's gone and you can't retrieve the trust, then what? Back in the probate, right?
Yeah, then you're back
Starting
in
from
probate.
scratch. Yeah, so not only do you need to do it, you need to keep a copy of it. And one copy for you is not sufficient. If your house, this is a true story, if your house burns down, you will have lost it.
Yes.
So friend, relative, maybe it's multiple
Digital
copies.
now,
Digital's
nowadays,
fantastic.
that's-
Cloud is fantastic. That'll help you out as
Yes.
well. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, thank you for coming in today. I appreciate it. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. It was
So-
lovely.
Yeah, probably. I promise you wouldn't be painful. I told you. Renee is an expert at wills, trusts, all things having to do with estate planning. I recommend her most highly. She's done great work for my clients and will hopefully continue to. Very, very happy to have her as sort of part of our little team that we built here. And remember, we do all sort of things, foreclosure defense and all sorts of, we cover all kinds of problems for you. for you. If you have a problem with real estate, whatever it is, however strange, the stranger the better. Normal's good too. Whatever your problem is, feel free to give me a call anytime, 24 hours a day. I can be reached at 661-714-1400. That's my personal cell phone. Renee can be reached at 661-255-5411. That is her office. You can give either of us a call anytime. Again, my cell phone, and it is my personal cell phone. You really can. I like my job. You really can reach me on that 24 hours a day. If I don't answer text, you can call me.